welcome. I'm Bill Carell, and this is Simple Questions for 100 People. Welcome to our experiment. It's the 100 Person Project, and I'm Bill Carell, and this is my investigation. The Simple Questions is a research project to gather data from 100 beautiful human beings for the sole purpose to see what actually happens across the interviews. The questions are fixed, and all the interviews will remain consistent, with the variable being the actual participants themselves. It's as if I'm having you, Joanna, come sit on my porch to share your ideas so I can learn about people. So we're looking forward to what we will discover when we're complete. And we are very interested in the people, the process, and your particular story. Well, with that said, it's my distinct pleasure to, Joanna, why don't you introduce yourself? What is your full name?
Okay. What is my full name? It's Joanna Felice Brandi. And Felice is Italian, Felice, and it means happy. And the reason that I actually don't use it very often, but I will introduce myself. I am a happiness coach and I am a certified chief happiness officer. So that's one of those coincidences you just can't make up.
No, it's wonderful. So what's your favorite nickname that most people don't know?
Most people don't know, and I don't like people to nickname me. So I will tell you, but I don't want anybody using it except the few people who already use it, and that's JoJo.
Jojo. All right. We will not, nobody ever, you're all sworn to
Yeah.
secrecy out there, okay?
And you know what? It's so funny because the people that do use it, it's such an endearment. But when somebody makes it up and just starts calling me that, I get very upset.
Really?
Yeah.
That doesn't sound very Felice to me, you know? Felice. So I got to stay with that for one more minute. So the folks that do call you that and you enjoy it, who are they to you?
Just close friends, a few
Okay.
very, very close old friends.
So what you're saying to me is one of these days I can call you Jojo, and when you stop smacking me in the face, I'll know that I'm a friend.
Maybe. We're becoming old friends, aren't we? We're getting old together, Bill.
Yeah, and you know what? We have all that in the future to look forward to, don't we?
We do. We
Yeah.
do.
So on to the questions again. When did you first notice what color hair you had, Joanne?
You know, I don't know, but what I do remember is that people used to comment because my hair was jet black. So,
Wow.
and I was born with a head full of hair. So, from a very young age, people would say, "Oh my God, look at all her hair," and it was black. So I don't remember the age, but I'm guessing it's 3 or 4.
That's interesting. So I would never have guessed that about you. Your hair is absolutely gorgeous, and it's not black. So
No, not
are you?
anymore. It's more
So are
like
your
the
roots?
color of your beard. So
Yeah, exactly. So how do you? Are your roots in southern Italy or Sicily? Is that where you're
all my
from?
yes, yes. My family, both sides of my family are from the area around Naples and the area around Rome. So yeah, southern
Oh,
Italy.
nice, very nice. So, what is your favorite thing to do to intentionally waste time?
And you know what? That was hard. I don't really intentionally waste time. Uh, but I'd have to say the two things that I do. One is email, which is, ugh, but I am such an information junkie that I cannot resist a good subject line. So that's one. And sometimes it's unintentional, but I do it anyway. And the other one is talk to strangers. I walk on the beach a lot, and I'm extremely fond of talking to other people's children because
Hmm.
my grandchildren don't live in the area near me. So I like to talk to other people's kids.
Kids are fun, aren't they?
They are fun.
And I'll tell you what, that it may start out as a waste of time, but I don't know about you. I always learn something whenever I talk to children.
Yeah, yeah.
All righty then. So, what is your favorite movie to watch alone?
Alone or with a loved one, it's Field of Dreams. I don't mind it alone at all because then I can weep at whatever part I want to weep at and don't have to explain it.
Yeah, there are lots of opportunities in that movie, aren't there?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. What's your favorite scene?
What's my favorite scene? It's the moment and his wife, let's see if I can recall it. There's one moment there where his wife agrees that this is not bogus dreaming, that there's something going on, and she's like, "Yeah, let me get you packed and get out of here." So there's that one moment of recognition.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a frequent flyer in all the Costner movies. There's always this one thing where whoever the
Oh
love interest is finally gets it. Tin
yeah,
cup, same thing, right? No, no, Roy, you go right ahead. You're not crazy. Anyhow, yeah, I'll tell you what. That's a good movie. And
yeah.
if you were to have an action figure made of you, what
Uh,
superpower would it have, and what colors would its uniform be?
I think the superpower would be the ability to read minds or communicate without speaking. That
Mhm.
kind of mind thing. And her colors would be purple and gold.
Purple and gold. Excellent choice. And why purple and gold?
You know what? Because I just gravitate towards them.
Yeah.
My website is that color. I never sat down and said, what colors should I have? I just gravitated towards a certain, I like the idea that purple is both red and blue together.
Yep.
I like that blending. Um, and I just love, the whether it's the sunrise or the sunset. I live in Florida. I see
Yep.
sunrises more than sunsets on the coast that I live in, but there's something about when that sky lights up, whether the sun's going up or down, that I am just in love with.
Yeah. I completely get that. Let's go back to the superpower again. So now
Okay.
you've got this ability to communicate non-verbally. What you
Hmm,
gonna do with that?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Perhaps to just feel closer to another, perhaps be able to help people because
Yep.
perhaps I can understand something they haven't yet figured out how to understand themselves.
Yeah.
I think intuitive. Um, I'm already intuitive, and I'd like to be more intuitive.
Terrific. Yeah, I would practically say you've got that superpower already. Very close to it.
Not quite.
Yeah.
But
There's always room for improvement. Yes.
of course.
Yeah. Practice makes
Perfect.
progress.
Progress. Oh, progress. Gee, I think I teach that somewhere on some program.
Yeah. Yeah. We've both heard that in different places and
Yeah.
coming out of our own mouths, right? So, what did you want to grow up to be when you were 5 years old?
Well, I'm gonna have to make a guess at that. I'm guessing I wanted to grow up to be a lawyer because I grew up with lawyers. And I can remember from a very young age watching Perry Mason on television. I don't know if he was even on when I was 5, but I do recall maybe at the age of 10 leaping out of the chair with the word objection. So I think that it seeped into my being. So I guess at 5 I wanted to be a lawyer. It wasn't until I got older that I realized I didn't want to.
Yeah. And you have to want to say, Your Honor,
Oh, yeah, of course.
like the prosecutor did all the time.
The old Perry Masons were so great. And my other favorite was Columbo. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So now I watch Monk because it reminds me of something, of being intuitive, notice everything detective.
Yes. And those guys are always able to solve every problem in
I
1 hour.
love
Have you ever noticed that?
it. I know. I know.
Holy, holy mackerel. Can we use more of that in the world?
I know. I know.
So this one's kind of interesting to me. What is your greatest accomplishment, Joanna?
My daughter
Hmm.
and her family
Yeah.
and her ability. You're gonna have me crying in a second. She's having a big birthday coming up. So I was a single parent, and there were lots of rocky times.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Congratulations.
have, to have raised a child who is all at the same time intelligent, extremely independent, left home at an early age, traveled all over the world herself, waited to get married, bless her heart, till she was old enough to understand what it was
Yeah.
instead of like her mother. And she has a lovely family. So I think she's my greatest accomplishment is how well she mothers her children.
You got the source code programming in early, didn't you?
I
And
did.
it sounds like she's making the most of the gifts that you gave her.
Well, I do a lot of studying, and of course, there's a lot of talk these days about trauma and attachment theory and all that. And
Sure.
I was way ahead of that curve because I instinctively knew I was a rabid breastfeeding mother. You couldn't tell me anything against it, no matter what. But I really understood that was so important to those first, and we were without dad those first years, and so yeah, that was really, really important.
Excellent. I'm getting goosebumps.
I know. I get goosebumps too because she's really wonderful.
Yeah, there's nothing better than family. I mean,
I know.
beautiful. So, who is your favorite person to listen to?
Well, I had to consider that question because I had a few thoughts there. Um, one of them is Lily, and Lily is 8 going on 9, and she's 8 going on 32. That kind of a I know it all and I've got it all figured out kind of thing. And I guess with the grace of FaceTime, I get to see her once in a while. But
Yeah,
even if I'm just talking to her on the phone, the kid is a riot, and she's very funny. She's very insightful.
hmm,
So I'm going to get to see her in person next week. So that'll be wonderful. But she's actually one of my favorite people to talk to because I don't have to, there's no pretense. I don't have to appear to be smart. So much of our business conversation, we're conscious about, am I showing up in the right way? You know what I'm talking about.
I
And
do.
she's a real pleasure to talk to. So, and the
And,
other person that I really love listening to is the late Stuart Wilde.
hmm,
I don't know if you know Stuart's work, but he was an extremely eclectic martial art teacher, martial arts teacher, who I would say a philosopher.
they
And
usually are.
yes, and I have loved his work for a long time. He's been gone now for many years, but I still love listening to him. I've got lots and lots and lots of old stuff that I still like listening to.
Yeah. Stuart Wilde. I'll have to remember to look that up a
Oh,
little bit.
yes, he's very irreverent. I love irreverent people.
Is it UART or EW?
UART, STUAR.
UART.
Yes, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Excellent.
He's one of my favorite. I've got a lot of other favorites. So I mean, I listen to a lot of different people, but
There's been a lot of voices impacting my life too. I can tell you
I
that.
know it's amazing. Years ago, um, it was back in the corporate world, so it's over 30 years ago. When I discovered people like Tony Robbins and Deepak Chopra and stuff like that, I had my little Walkman, and I lived in Seacliff, New York, where there were lots of hills, and I'd walk up and down those hills, just listening over and over and over, rewinding and listening again.
That's great. I'll tell you what, for 10 years, I pretty much had a Walkman going all the time or cassette tapes in my car driving back and forth to
Uh-huh.
work.
I know, me too. And now, of course, we have our smartphones and our podcasts, and it's
We
almost actually it
do.
is overwhelming. There's so many choices now, and almost everybody I talk to said, "Oh, you got to listen to this podcast." And of course I do. Well, what is it about that they're trying to tell me? So
Interesting.
yeah, yeah.
All right. So please complete this sentence. When I grow up, I'd like to.
Start painting.
Interesting. What kind of painting?
Probably watercolors.
Have you done it before?
Not really. No, not really. I used to be quite the crafter, but after a while, it just, having your own business takes up a lot of energy and a lot of time. And
Yep.
if you have it, when I lived in a house where I had a basement, I had an attic, I had a back porch, I had more space. I could start a project and leave it there
Right.
and keep going back to it. Here, it's a little bit more challenging to do that. But I know it's an excuse not to start painting now, but it's out there for me. I'm not going to take advantage of it now. But
It sounds like a really nice thing to look forward to.
I do look forward to it. And I have a girlfriend who is retired and began painting. And turns out she's a magnificent artist. She didn't even have a paintbrush in her hand, you know. So I have beautiful people like this artist behind me, who's a good friend of mine. These are people that started painting with no background whatsoever, and the talent just showed up.
Interesting.
I love it.
Yeah. It's really quite beautiful. There's a lot of detail with either shells or stones, but it's beach, and there's a water, a wave line and another wave line, and it's just very soothing, very practical to have in your
This
space.
this one is, and it is actually, I don't think you can see it from here. It is actually made with sand and made with crystals.
Oh,
And
nice.
it's the depth on it is about that thick. I mean, I don't touch it, but it and when you hold a light on it, it twinkles everywhere. So it's just like,
A lot
so
of
cool.
glitter, huh?
I
Yeah,
know, I love it. I love it. She moved, and she knew I loved this. It's for sale, should you
yeah.
want to buy it, but she didn't want to put it into storage. She moved into a smaller space, and she doesn't have a gallery at this. Well, she has a gallery in New Mexico right now, but she's storing this here for the time being
There
until
you
you're
go.
ready to buy it, Bill, and I'll get you a good price.
Fantastic. And it's appearing many times a week on Zoom, isn't it?
Absolutely, it's got its own following.
Excellent. So we talked about people, your family, your daughter, Lily.
Mhm.
Um, what's the most important thing in life to you right now?
Important thing. I think what's the most important thing in life to me right now is getting strong again.
Mm,
I haven't felt I've had some health challenges, some emotional challenges, as everybody has during COVID and what have you. And one thing led to another, and I pulled this and pulled that, and tore my rotator cuff off, and did all those kinds of things, and no longer enjoy a yoga practice the way I used to. You know, when
mhm.
the habit breaks, it's really interesting. I didn't realize how habitual my work, but I used to work out 6 days a week. I used to go at night. I used to work out, and when my body stopped responding to that, and when I got stupid and did things that hurt me, I didn't go back to it. So I don't feel nearly as strong as I did when I had
Yeah,
those workouts. And so to me, right now, the most important thing is getting back into the kind of shape where number one, all my clothes fit. That's a big deal at the moment. And number two, I feel that sense of strength that I used to feel, coming
yeah,
from my core.
yeah.
There's this, I'm not quite there yet. And that's what I'm working towards.
I think your attention is in the right area. There's no
I
doubt
think so
about it.
too. I think so too. When I'm strong, I can be a very tough broad.
a,
Imagine a tough broad teaching happiness. Isn't that like amazing?
a tough Italian broad teaching happiness,
Teaching people to be happy.
whose name
Good
translates. That's fantastic. So, what would you like to leave in the world after your life is done?
luck. A legacy of love through the people that I interact with, through my writing. Here we go again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you this, I love you. No
Thank
doubt
you.
about it.
Thank you. When
You
I
are.
think about that, it really does make me well up, because I think we all have the opportunity to leave a legacy of love. And I think that's a level of mindfulness that when we have it, we want to make sure that whether we've just left the person at the supermarket, or left a grandchild, or left a neighbor, that there's something that we did to make them feel good,
Yeah.
to make them feel loved, to help them feel good or help them feel loved. And that's becoming more and more important to me, because as the world gets tougher, I want to spread more of that good stuff.
It is very interesting. I mean, it's fascinating, really, that it's a renewable resource. There's no end to it, and someone has to start it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to be a fire starter, in that positive way and light the world up, I'm your partner.
Well, you have been.
Yeah,
Ever since
yes,
I
I
met
am.
you. You have been. It's really wonderful.
Yeah. So now, if you go to a nice Italian baker, what's he going to say to you? I don't want to give you a dozen. I give you a dozen plus one because you always going to get a copy, right?
Yeah, it's always 13, right?
Yep.
Um, so what's the
So
question?
the baker's question is, what is the thing that most people misunderstand about you?
Oh, I think most people make the assumption that I'm always happy because I teach it, and that couldn't be further from the truth. I teach it because I'm trying to master it in some way,
Yeah.
um, and I'm trying to teach people to outsmart their genetic happiness set point. I have a very low happiness set point. Genetically, I was a colicky, awful, cranky, miserable child. And I mean, there were reasons for that. Who knew what lactose intolerance was in those days? They called it
Right.
colic, and I was one of those babies that screamed all night long. And it's hard to engender the gentleness and the love of your parents when they're exhausted all the time. So I think there are probably many people, and you have more than one kid. I mean, they come out different. And I was the cranky one. I was the one that, kept them up at night, et cetera, et cetera. So I think what people misunderstand about me, because I work at being happy and because I do what I do, is that I'm happy all the time. And that couldn't be further from the truth. I'm happy a lot. I'm happy. I can't turn it on and off. I do find that if there was an on and off switch for happiness, it would be gratitude.
Yes. Yes. I find that the two easiest access to really being in a good space are, one, thank you very much, and number two, I love you.
Yeah.
Those two things, if people can be free as a bird with those and not quite as stingy as we tend
I
to
know.
be,
I
and have
know.
a little confidence that not everybody's going to love you back, and that doesn't means nothing about whether or not
Mhm.
you love them. And I really do appreciate that about you, 100%.
Yeah. One of my teachers is Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, and she wrote the book Love 2.0, as well as the book Positivity. One thing I learned from her is it doesn't have to, we all have this romantic, mushy notion about love and what love is.
Yeah,
But love is finding something positive to say to another person. And each one of those little drops of positivity add up, and
yeah,
so we can enrich each other's relationship by just being mindful of things we can say and things we can do that will make that other person feel good about themselves in your presence.
yeah. I really do appreciate that, and I also think, in terms of um, what you said at the beginning, that you're happy all the time in other people's view, that wouldn't be real. That wouldn't be authentic.
No,
You have to have moments to experience life in its blood and guts physical
yep,
form. It's just how it is sometimes.
yep,
However, when you have an access to some sort of a dashboard that allows you to make that smaller and smaller as time goes on, those are moments in your life that you will not get back. So you should live them fully, every last one of them.
great advice, really great advice. And I'm getting better and better at it as I get older. I don't know if that's a function of getting older or a function of the fact that I study about happiness all the time.
I love that. It's like my favorite go-to definition of wisdom was a Dean Martin meme that I first saw on Facebook probably 15 years ago. And he says, wisdom, you know where that comes from? And the answer to that is it comes from experience. And where does experience come from? Good judgment. And where does good judgment come from? Bad judgment.
I know.
So you have to fail, your way to getting to some point where you actually have a little balance and a little bit of freedom to move in your life and access to joy and self-expression.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's really important. I think that may be something that's missing. I do a lot of reading about, people in the workplace And of course, now there's a lot of talk about Zoomers, Generation Z, and what they want, and what there's something we have to learn to give them that maybe they didn't get. And they're really seeking purpose. They're really seeking purpose in life. And I don't know that at the age of 20 or 25 or 26, I was even thinking about what is my purpose in life. I was just doing life. I was just showing up and going to work and being a mother and doing what I needed to do.
We had a lot of task work in front of us in those days, didn't we? You just woke up and there were things to do because
Yeah.
of how we decided to live our lives. And a lot
Yeah.
of kids are not coming out of their parents' basement until they're 30 years old, for one reason or another. And
One
they're
reason or another.
justifiable.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we were way more. Of course, those were the days when you and I grew up, when your parents opened the door in the morning and out you went, and they said, "I'll call you in time for dinner." And my mother stood at the head of the block because my best friend lived at the other end, and she would just yell. That's how we knew it was time to come home. And
That-
everybody's parents did the same thing.
yes.
I mean, not that we didn't have Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or other activities that were more formalized, but mostly we were very independent. I couldn't wait to get my first job. I had working papers by the time I was 14. I couldn't wait to make my own money,
Yeah.
be independent. I would walk to work. It was maybe 8 or 9 or 10 blocks away, and I'd walk to work, come home from work.
We have a lot of things in common. I always had money in my pocket from probably age 5 to 6 on. I
Yeah,
always found ways to do little odd jobs, pick strawberries for 25 cents a quart, sell them to the ladies in the neighborhood for 40 cents a quart.
that's
But
funny.
yeah, no, I'll tell you what, it's a lot of fun. We're at the end of our scripted questions, but do you have any questions of me, Joanna?
Well, I'm curious about why you're doing this project, and where did it come from in your head?
This is my podcasts have caused me to be moved by world events.
Okay.
And the first podcast, Lighting the Candle, A World That Works, had to do with the nightly news 2 years ago with nothing but terrible things on it with regard to cities on fire, people calling each other names, shouting each other down, shouting down speakers on universities, you know, all of the horrible things that were going on. And so that was the lighting the candle thing. No, there's a lot of people out there who need to have access to something else that's along the lines of empowerment. And so we focus on language in that one. But this one had to do specifically with the talking heads that were explaining all of the things that I do not know about people because they must have the same traits given that they look alike or given that they have the same skin color or given that all this nonsense. And that the whole idea is that this group is different than that group is different than that. And then that went into nobody knows who I am within this group because I keep changing it from day to day. Okay. Catch me if you can. So I just thought, if I can interview 100 people and find out, if there's commonality in terms of their individualism and their uniqueness, as well as how alike we all are, given what we have to do in our lives and given how we've been raised and given how we relate to each other in our culture, I'm finding out that people are wired more the same than differently, if you
Yeah,
will.
I would think you would find that, right?
Yes, that's what it seems to be doing so far. Great
So
question.
interesting. And where'd you find your questions? Did you make them up? Did you find them somewhere?
I made them up.
You just made them up. That's
I
great.
just made them up. That's what I do. Yeah.
Nice. Oh, well, then I will tap into your brilliance one of these days. I'm in the process of creating a journal and looking for really good journaling questions around the area of happiness, not specifically about happiness, but the kinds of questions that when you answer them will make you feel good or help you understand more about your own modus operandi. And, it's certainly within the framework of what I teach.
So the actors workshop with James Lipton.
Oh, there's
All
a
the
vague
people.
memory there. There's a vague memory there. Yeah.
Well, I was inspired by his years and years and years of people who had come through the school, the Screen Actors School, everybody from De Niro to you name somebody, right? Coming
Okay.
back and being interviewed by questions. So I have to give props, to him. And what's really cool about it is I've had about 4 or 5 people do exactly what you said. There's a woman who coaches folks that are doing podcasts, and so she has a dozen questions, for podcasters. How'd you get started? What was it that made you want to do this? What
Good.
you asked me about that, and then I have a dear friend who's a minister. And he said, Bill, I love these questions and I'm adapting them so that I can interview folks, that I'm pastoring, and get them to tell me more about themselves. And so you get into a conversation, he said sometimes, and he's not quite sure what to ask. And he says, it's just brilliant to have a set of scripted questions to,
Sure.
to go in with.
Sure.
So there's been more, and I really appreciate it. And I'd be happy to help you whenever you like.
Oh, good. Good. Did you ever hear of the 36 questions that you can ask someone to fall in love with them?
No, you want to send me that one?
Yeah, I'll find it for you. I don't know where it is, but there are 36 questions. Years ago, I read them in the Times, and then they started showing up everywhere. Now they're everywhere that you can. I don't know that they've made anybody fall in love with me, but they help you deepen a relationship.
Yeah, there's a certain amount of confidence that you get by having some go-to things that you're going to be interested in. And out of the 36, I'm sure that 4 or 5 will pop to the top. And
Yeah.
those you won't have to go much further than that to find out whether or not there's a love connection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that is awesome. And anything else?
No, I think that's it for today, unless you have any more questions.
Well, you know what? If I do, I know how to get in touch with you, and I'll,
You
I'll
do.
probably chat you up for a minute or two after we finish here with all of our friends at home. But you at home, thank you for joining us again. If you'd like to be on this podcast, you know how to get in touch with me. Just do it through where you watch the podcast and put a comment, and we'll be happy to respond to it. In the meantime, thank you again, Joanna. You've been a wonderful guest and a great friend, and I really appreciate your time here today. And keep working on that happiness thing.
I will. I will. And let me. May I give your reader, your listeners, my website?
Yeah.
Of
Oh,
course,
sure.
it's a business website, but it's returnonhappiness.com. And that's
Excellent.
because I'm committed to companies getting a return on keeping their people happy.
All right. And I want you to know, folks at home, if you get a chance to be with Joanna, it's a rare and very spiritual and very loving friendship. All right. Bye-bye for now, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.
You've been listening to Simple Questions for 100 People, part of the Exvadio Podcast Network. You can find every episode at exvadio.com/podcasts, the Apple Podcast app, Google Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and wherever you find podcasts.